Story 1. Let me start with some context, because that is what makes this so strange. For years, my morning routine has been almost mechanical. I wake up at 4:30 a.m. every weekday. I am out the door by 5:15. I clock in at work around 5:50 a.m., give or take a few minutes. It is so consistent that my boss knows my schedule by heart. The only time I am ever late is if there is a major accident or traffic jam on the highway, and if that happens, I always call ahead. One morning last August started exactly the same as every other day. I woke up on time. I got dressed. I left the house at 5:15 a.m. like always. The roads were quiet, and traffic was unusually light. Nothing felt off. Nothing stood out. About halfway through my commute, my phone rang. It was my boss. He said, "Hey, are you coming in?" I laughed and said, "Yeah." "Why?" He paused and replied, "It's 6:30 a.m., and you usually call if you're going to be late." That stopped me cold. I looked down at my dashboard clock. Sure enough, it read 6:30 a.m. Somehow, between leaving my front door and getting onto the main road, I had lost nearly an hour. There were no traffic jams, no detours, no memory of stopping anywhere, no feeling of zoning out or falling asleep. As far as I could tell, the entire drive felt completely normal. To this day, I have no explanation for where that missing hour went. Story 2. Nothing too extreme, but it definitely creeped my wife and me out. We had a Wii set up in our living room. The sensor bar was sitting on the TV stand directly in front of the television, exactly where it is in every normal setup. The cord was not wrapped or secured in any special way. It just hung loosely behind the TV in a messy bundle. One night, we were on the couch watching TV and cuddling. Everything was calm and quiet. No sudden movements, no noise, nothing unusual. Then, out of nowhere, the Wii sensor bar launched across the room. It did not slide or fall. It flew. It moved so fast and so forcefully that it traveled until the cord reached its full length, then snapped tight and dropped the sensor bar onto the floor. It genuinely looked like someone had grabbed it and thrown it. We both just froze and stared at each other. At the time, we had both a cat and a dog. The cat was asleep in another room, and the dog was lying on the couch with us. Neither of them could have touched it. We did notice that one of the birthday cards we had displayed on top of the TV was now on the floor. That was the only possible explanation we could come up with. Maybe the card fell, somehow caught the cord, and pulled the sensor bar off the stand. To test that theory, I spent about 10 minutes throwing that card as hard as I possibly could at the cord. I could not get the sensor bar to move even an inch. In the end, we had no explanation. We eventually laughed it off and moved on. But in the moment, it was a very strong "what the hell was that" experience that still sticks with us. Story 3. A friend of mine once told me about something that happened when he was a teenager. He shared it reluctantly, and it was clear it was not a story he enjoyed talking about. At the time, he slept in a bunk bed with his younger brother, who slept on the lower bunk. One night, he had an extremely vivid dream. In it, a demon wearing the skin of a man was standing near his brother, threatening to kill him. Terrified and desperate to protect his brother, my friend somehow got hold of a knife in the dream and pressed it against the demon's neck. The demon looked at him and calmly said, "The only way to rid evil is through evil." My friend hesitated, unsure what to do. Then he woke up. When he came to, he realized he was no longer dreaming. He was actually standing over his younger brother in real life, holding a butcher knife and pressing it against his brother's neck. His brother was still asleep, completely unaware of what had almost happened. Shocked and horrified, my friend immediately pulled away. Later, when his brother woke up, he told him about a nightmare he had that same night. In his dream, his older brother had attacked him with a knife, and during the dream he heard the exact same words spoken: "The only way to rid evil is through evil." Nothing like that ever happened again, but the incident deeply disturbed my friend. The experience left him shaken and struggling for a long time, eventually leading him to seek psychotherapy to process what had happened. I cannot say for certain whether the story is true. Part of me wonders if it could have been exaggerated or imagined. But he never seemed eager to tell it, and the way he spoke about it always felt more like someone recalling a trauma than someone inventing a story. Story 4. I was driving down the highway around 3 a.m. with my infant daughter in the car. The road was mostly empty, and everything felt calm and routine. Out of nowhere, a semi-truck pulled up alongside me. Without warning, it swerved straight into my lane. I had no time to react. The truck forced me off the road and sent my car down a very steep incline. I remember the moment we went over. For some reason, instead of braking, I instinctively gunned the engine. I have no idea why. Panic had completely taken over. As the car was heading downhill, I kept telling myself over and over, "Step on the brake. Step on the brake." But I couldn't. My foot would not move. It honestly felt like something was physically holding it down, stopping me. Then I heard a voice. Clear and calm. It said, "Okay, now you can step on the brake." The moment I heard that, my foot moved. I hit the brake, and the car stopped. Neither my daughter nor I were injured. The only damage to the car was a hole in the oil pan. When the tow truck driver and the highway patrol officer arrived, they were both stunned. They couldn't believe the car hadn't rolled. After looking at the scene, they told me something that still chills me. If I had tried to stop any sooner than I did, the car would have flipped, and we both likely would have been killed. To this day, I don't know what stopped me from braking earlier, or what that voice was. All I know is that waiting those extra seconds saved both of our lives. Story 5. Back in the 1990s, I worked the overnight shift at a small AM radio station. The building was isolated, and late nights there were usually quiet and uneventful. One night, while I was alone, I looked out the window and saw a car driving down the long driveway toward the station's parking lot. The headlights were clear and unmistakable. Since we almost never had visitors that late, I got up and went outside to see who it was. When I stepped out, the car was gone. There was nowhere it could have gone. The driveway was straight, and I would have seen or heard it if the car had turned around or backed out. There were no other exits and no place to hide. At first, I honestly thought I was losing my mind. Then the studio door opened and the announcer walked out. Before I could say anything, he looked confused and asked, "What happened to that car?" That was when I knew I hadn't imagined it. To this day, I still can't explain where that car came from or where it went. Story 6. When I was younger, 5 friends and I were playing flashlight tag, basically hide and seek, on one friend's family farm. The property was huge. On one side there was a pond, and beyond that, nothing but dense forest stretching out for miles. 2 of my friends and I had walkie-talkies, which felt like a huge advantage. The forest scared all 3 of us, but we figured that was exactly why it was the best place to hide. If we went deep enough, no one would find us. Once inside the woods, we split up. I went off alone, while the other 2 stayed together. For about 30 minutes, we quietly talked back and forth on the walkie-talkies, comparing hiding spots and laughing about how impossible it would be for anyone to find us. I even climbed partway up a tree and found a small nook where I could sit comfortably and stay hidden. Another 20 minutes passed, and suddenly the walkie-talkies went silent. I tried calling out to them. No response. I tried again. Still nothing. Then, finally, I heard a beep back. The channel stayed open for about 5 seconds, but no one spoke. I tried again. This time, I heard breathing. Slow, steady breathing, right through the walkie-talkie. I immediately assumed they were messing with me, but even knowing that, my stomach dropped. It did not sound playful. It sounded close. I climbed down from the tree and started heading back toward the house. As soon as my feet hit the ground, I heard howling in the distance. At first, I thought it was coyotes, but something was wrong. It sounded like someone trying to imitate a coyote. Human, but not quite right. The howling continued, and I was certain it was getting closer. I started moving faster, then running, aiming straight for the edge of the tree line. My heart was pounding. Just as I crossed out of the woods, the walkie-talkie crackled again. What came through was not breathing this time. It was laughter. A harsh, high-pitched cackle. Like something straight out of a horror movie. I sprinted the rest of the way to the house faster than I ever have in my life. When I got there, one of the friends who had been seeking asked what was wrong. I told him that the two friends with the walkie-talkie were still in the woods and had seriously freaked me out. He stared at me and said, "They are back already. They said they couldn't find you and thought you came back too." That was when we realized the truth. They had lost the walkie-talkie while walking back. So whatever I heard breathing, howling, and laughing through that radio was not my friends. To this day, I still do not know if something found that walkie-talkie, or if fear made my brain fill in the gaps. All I know is that I never went back into those woods at night again. Story 7. Growing up, my brother was violent toward me. Not normal sibling fights, but real beatings. Black eyes, bloody noses, and police being called more than once. Living in that house meant always being on edge. One day, while hiding out at the library, I came across a book about an indigenous tribe that believed you could enter another person's dreams and place illness on them. The book went into detail about rituals and mental preparation that were supposedly required before attempting it. I was young, scared, angry, and desperate to feel some sense of control. That night, I followed the steps as closely as I could. I focused on the instructions, then went to sleep. I had a vivid dream. In the dream, I was standing at one end of a long, empty road. My brother stood at the opposite end, far away but clearly visible. I raised my hand, pointed directly at him, and said out loud, "I cast a sickness on you." The dream ended. The next day, we were sitting in front of the television when my brother suddenly complained that he felt awful. "I feel like complete garbage," he said. Without thinking, the words just came out of my mouth. "You have mono." I have no idea why I said that. I did not know much about mono, and there was no reason for it to pop into my head. He snapped back with an insult, and the conversation ended there. About a week later, he was diagnosed with mono. I was terrified. At 15 years old, I was convinced I had done something real and unforgivable. I genuinely believed I might be some kind of witch and that I was destined for hell. What made it worse was something that happened shortly after. I had a friend whose father was a college professor. We would sometimes hang out at their house, and he loved sharing obscure facts while we sat around talking. One night, completely unprompted, he started telling me about a tribe that believed they could enter people's dreams and cause illness. I felt sick to my stomach. I became paranoid that people somehow knew what I had done, that it was going to come back on me in some horrible way. Now that I am older and no longer a scared teenager, I can look back on it with a clearer head. I do not believe I caused anything. I know it was almost certainly a coincidence amplified by trauma and fear. Still, even now, it remains one of the most unsettling coincidences of my life. Story 8. I was 6 years old, and my brother was 10. We also had a foster brother who was 21, someone who lived with us on and off over the years. One night, I woke up suddenly and saw him standing in the doorway of my bedroom. He was just standing there, quietly, like he was checking on me. I remember feeling confused but not scared. I softly said his name, unsure if I was really awake. He looked at me and said, "It's okay. Go back to sleep." I did. Around that same time, my older brother woke up crying. He told our parents that he had a dream about a night standing alone on a hill. He said the dream made him feel incredibly sad, even though nothing bad actually happened in it. Later that night, we found out what had happened. Our foster brother had died in a car crash that evening. Looking back, neither of us knew at the time why those moments felt so strange or emotional. We were just kids. But those memories have stayed with us ever since, tied to the moment we lost him. Story 9. When I was 19 and my best friend was 20, we were driving back to my house after visiting someone at work. We are both nearly 40 now, and we still talk about this. It was early evening, just before dark. The sun was fading, but visibility was still excellent. Streetlights were on, businesses were lit up, and the road ahead was easy to see. The road itself was wide, 3 lanes in each direction, with a concrete median separating traffic. I was driving in the left lane closest to the median, approaching a traffic light. As we got closer, I noticed a man standing in the median, well before the crosswalk. The moment I saw him, a wave of unease hit me. Something about his presence felt wrong. Almost immediately after that thought crossed my mind, he stepped off the median and began walking directly into traffic. Both my friend and I reacted at the same time. We braced ourselves as I slammed on the brakes. There was a car in the lane to my right, so I could not swerve to avoid him. I was certain we were about to hit him. But we did not. We went straight through him. There was no impact. No sound. No jolt. Nothing that would suggest we had struck a person. I brought the car to a complete stop and looked into the rearview mirror, expecting to see him behind us, injured or getting up. There was no one there. We both turned around in our seats, scanning the road, the median, the sidewalk. There was nowhere he could have run to. Nowhere he could have hidden in that amount of time. The area was completely open. Almost in sync, we turned to each other and asked the same question. Did you see that man? We had both seen the exact same thing. A man. Neither of us could remember his face clearly, but we both remembered being confused by what he was wearing. It looked like a white robe, loose and flowing. We both distinctly remember the white fabric sweeping across the windshield, as if his body had hit it. But nothing had hit the car. What made it even more unsettling was my baby. She was about 3 months old and had been crying during the drive. When the car screeched to a stop, she went completely silent. The sudden quiet felt wrong, like the whole world had paused for a moment. To this day, neither of us has been able to explain what happened. We still talk about it from time to time, replaying it over and over, trying to make sense of it. But every explanation falls apart. It felt like the man stepped into our path, passed through the car, and vanished, leaving behind nothing but fear and confusion. And after all these years, that moment still feels just as real as it did that night. Story 10. I walked the 2 miles home from my closing shift at Taco Bell, and the entire way I felt uneasy. Nothing specific was wrong, but the feeling never left, like I was being watched. When I finally got home, I felt a brief wave of relief as I shut the door behind me and locked it. At the time, I still lived with my parents in their split foyer house. From the front, the basement was half underground, but in the back it opened up at ground level with windows and a porch door. Standing in the entryway, I flipped on the basement light for just a moment to make sure the floor was clear of my brother's toys. Once I confirmed it was safe to walk, I turned the light back off and started down the stairs. Halfway down, that familiar sensation hit me. The one where you feel something in the corner of your eye before your brain has time to catch up. Before I fully realized what I was looking at, my eyes locked onto the basement window. Something was standing outside. All I could see were eyes. Red, glowing eyes, staring straight back at me through the glass. I froze. My mind scrambled to make sense of it, but whatever it was had to be enormous. Based on where the eyes were in the window, it had to be over 7 feet tall. I didn't wait to find out more. I bolted into my room, slammed the door, and dove under the covers like a terrified child. I lay there for several minutes, heart pounding, trying to convince myself I had imagined the whole thing. Then I heard the back porch door open. Immediately, my dog, who was kenneled just inside that same porch door, went absolutely berserk. Growling, barking, throwing himself against the kennel. The door slammed shut again a second later. I stayed under those covers, shaking, but also strangely relieved. If something had been out there, my dog had seen it too. I never saw the red eyes again. I never got an explanation. All I know is that something was outside that night. And if my dog hadn't been there, I don't know what would have happened. Story 11. When I was younger, my friends and I were really into exploring creepy places. Most of the time, it amounted to nothing. Strange shadows, weird noises, the kind of stuff you hype up in your own head once it gets dark. One night, we decided to check out a place called Witch Road. We had heard there was a cabin deep in the woods that was supposedly terrifying. Normally, we did a ton of research before going anywhere like that. Stories, past sightings, warnings. This time, for whatever reason, we did none of that. We found the address, printed out MapQuest directions, and headed out. The road itself was unsettling. Completely isolated, surrounded by dense woods, no houses, no streetlights. We parked on the side of the road around 8:15 on a midsummer evening, just as daylight was fading into dusk. We stepped out of the car and walked to the trunk to grab our flashlights and backpacks. As we rounded the back of the car, I looked up and froze. There was the cabin. It was closer than I expected, partially hidden by trees but unmistakable. I gestured for my friends to look. At the same time, we noticed a light. It looked like an orb, slowly drifting toward us from the direction of the cabin. It was far enough away that we could not tell exactly what it was, just a glowing shape moving steadily through the woods. Oddly enough, I was not scared. I felt the opposite. Completely calm, curious, drawn to it. Without really thinking, I stepped off the road and into the woods, leaving my backpack and flashlight behind. My friends followed right behind me. Then the silence broke. We heard someone crashing through the brush, moving fast. A man burst into view, running toward us, holding a lantern. He was shouting, telling us we had to leave immediately. We did not ask questions. We turned around and went straight back to the car. The night was over. The drive away was quiet. We were all a little stunned, trying to process what had just happened. After a minute, one of my friends finally spoke. "Wait," he said. "Did that guy have a fucking lantern?" That was when it really sank in. I still think about that night sometimes. I have no idea who that man was, what we saw moving through the woods, or why the whole encounter felt so unreal. It remains one of the strangest moments of my life. Story 12. 6 years ago, I was outside with my siblings in our yard on a perfectly clear, sunny day. It was around high noon, bright enough that you could see everything clearly with no haze or clouds to mess with your eyes. Out of nowhere, I caught something moving in the sky out of the corner of my eye. When I turned to look directly at it, my brain just stalled. I could not immediately process what I was seeing. Floating high above us was a metal cube. Not rotating, not wobbling, not making any sound. Just gliding smoothly through the air. It had no wings. No visible propulsion. No trail. It was literally a cube, moving steadily across the sky like it belonged there. I completely lost my shit. I started yelling and pointing, and my siblings looked up just in time to see it too. We all stood there staring as it drifted along until it disappeared behind a line of trees at the edge of the yard. We ran to the other side of the trees, expecting to see it continue on its path. It was gone. No sound. No sudden acceleration. No explanation. Even now, thinking about it gives me chills. We lived right next to a military base at the time, so I tried to tell myself it was some kind of experimental aircraft or classified tech. But whatever it was, it had the aerodynamics of a literal brick. And bricks do not glide through the sky.